Okay, we're back to our regular meeting. Okay, first under new business, swearing newly elected officials.
You want to read the announcements first while we wait for Dawn to show up?
Yeah, actually, we could do that.
Sorry, no.
We're gonna go back to the announcements. Thanks, Mary.
All right. So, good evening, Hanson. Here are this week's announcements. The Town of Hanson 2019 street listing books are now available for purchase at the town clerk's office for $10. The Memorial Day Parade will form at Indian Head School at 9:45 a.m. on Monday, May 27th. The parade will kick off at 10 a.m. and proceed to the Town Hall Green for a brief ceremony and then off to Fern Hill Cemetery. The Town of Hanson and the Hanson Business Network are teaming up for the Hanson Day to be held on June 1st from 12 to 4 p.m. on the town green. Local churches, businesses, civic organizations, and other groups are invited to attend as an exhibitor at this event. There is no cost for participation, and exhibitors will be provided a table and chairs if needed, and space on the town green. We'll be asking exhibitors to engage attendees by having demonstrations, games, crafts, or any other type of activity. Please note there will be no items will be allowed to be sold other than those to benefit the 200th anniversary committee. If you are interested in being an exhibitor, please contact Laura Fitzgerald Kemet or Josh Sanger. And then a different note, transfer station stickers will be sold during Hanson Day. On a 3-year sticker is $30. Residents must be present their vehicle registration at the time of purchase, and it's only by check, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The Town of Hanson will hold a public auction of the town-owned lands on Wednesday, June 12th at 12 p.m. at Town Hall. For details, go to sullivan-auctioneers.com or by calling 617-350-7700. Volunteers are needed on the following committees: the 200th anniversary, capital improvement, cultural council, economic development, finance, historical commission, Memorial Day Patriot Observance, Memorial Field Trustees, and Zoning Board Alternate. Applications for appointment and information on the committees are available at the town website, www.hanson-ma.gov. And here are the upcoming meetings. School Repair Committee will be meeting on Thursday, January 23rd at 7 p.m. The 200th anniversary will be meeting on Thursday, May 30th at 7 p.m. Selectmen will be meeting on June 4th and June 18th, both at 7 p.m.
Hey, thanks.
Chairman, can I
Matt?
just say that we've had some people calling about, there's going to be a family fun day at Indian Head School on Saturday the 25th, and they have it up on their sign. That is a separate event than the Hanson Fun Day, which is going to be at Hanson Town Hall. So we'll have 2 fun days, 2 weekends in a row.
Ours is not called a fun day, although there will be fun in it.
Plenty of fun.
Yeah.
And are we still soliciting for this event? No. Or, I mean, because
Could
I
you
have heard talk
clarify
of
on that?
38 and 40.
We have 42 participating entities.
So are you looking for more?
I mean, the more the merrier, we can,
okay.
we can accommodate.
All right.
Yep.
Sounds like fun. Okay, Beth, are we ready? Swearing new elected officials. Yes.
Housing production plan, but sure, I'll get some more in.
Efficient use of your time.
I mean, you can too, it's ceremonial.
You're looking to
Yeah.
stall.
All right. Tell you what, Teresa, I'll do it with you.
Okay, great.
No.
Raise your right hand. Do you state your name? Solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon you to the positions that you are elected to the best of your abilities in accordance with the bylaws of the town and the laws of the Commonwealth.
I do.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, and Kenny, get a card for you.
Okay. I think I signed already, right?
You signed it, like Teresa, I need you to sign.
Sign right away.
Stating that you got sworn in tonight.
Kenny, can you go first?
It's Kenny Rose.
Yeah, I signed.
Yeah.
Tom, you just made official.
That's right. Now it's official, Tracy.
Thank you so much. Your card.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you very much. Am I dismissed?
You're dismissed.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, this is the time of year that we reorganize the Board of Selectmen because of the election.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I could, I would like to make a motion that we table reorganization of the Board of Selectmen until our next meeting on June 4th.
I can second that if you want to vote on it.
I'd just like to table it until our next meeting, not do it tonight.
Okay.
Did I do that right?
Aren't we required to do it under the
As I said,
bylaws, the
bylaw
first
said
meeting after the
Is it
election?
within the bylaw?
I thought it was, I
Just
don't
left. think
know
she's
for
sent a
sure.
memo about that. And I can't access them, so I don't know.
I can go look. Why don't you do some of the ancillary stuff and I'll go
Yeah, we
look.
can.
Okay. All right, next we have review and vote the housing production plan with the planning board. Do you guys want to start with that? How we doing? Yeah, you absolutely can start.
I'm Deborah Petty, the town planner, so I'm here with Judy Barrett, I'm Tom Tebow, and we have a small committee through some time and put together a housing production plan. Basically, I think Judy's gonna give us an overview, and then hopefully we'll vote to move forward, so we can get it again.
Okay.
So I'll give you a little bit of review of this. I think most or all of you may have already seen a draft of this, so, but just for the benefit of folks here who may not have seen it, let me explain what this is. Several years ago, the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is a state agency, adopted a regulation encouraging towns to create this kind of plan. And the incentive for doing it is that if you have a housing production plan that meets DHCD requirements and you produce new affordable housing pursuant to that plan, you may qualify a town to take sort of a break from having to approve Chapter 40B comprehensive permits. So if you have a plan and you're producing new affordable housing, you become eligible for what I just call a break, sort of an ability to take a break. And so this is really an important thing to do because it can be very helpful to you, especially if you're going to start seeing more comprehensive permit activity in your community. It might be nice to have a plan that communicates to landowners and developers, this is kind of what the town would like to see, and also to be able to get credit for production that might actually keep some projects you don't want away. But the key is production. The plan is only a way to say, this is what we're going to do. So this plan consists of 3 key parts as required by the state regulations. The first is a housing needs assessment. And you try to do kind of a demographic update, who lives in your community, what are the characteristics of the population, what do your household formation rates look like, in other words, how much household growth is happening here, what does housing demand look like, how many people are already living here who are lower income, who may be struggling to afford the homes that they're living in. And that you put all that stuff together, and it kind of gives you a sort of a picture of what the local need is, separate from whatever Chapter 40B says. Then you bring into this the sort of the Chapter 40B perspective, which I'm sure you're all familiar with this, but just briefly. Chapter 40B is a state law that was passed in 1969. It establishes I guess what I would call kind of a regional fair share standard, that if every town has 10% of their housing stock as low or moderate income, you're deemed to have met your responsibility for contributing to the regional need for affordable housing. So that law's been on the books for a long time. Some towns are well ahead of 10%, some are not. Kind of depends on what region of the Commonwealth you're in. Do you have utilities? Do you have the sort of things that developers look for to invest in communities or not? So different towns are in different places. But that law kind of establishes this threshold, and for towns that don't meet that 10%, it creates this, what I call kind of an expedited permitting process, the ability for the developer to come in to the Board of Appeals and ask for a unified permit, all the local regulations that normally would have required different entities get subsumed in that one permit. And the idea is that it's supposed to make it easier to create lower moderate income housing in communities. So that's kind of the statutory framework. What this housing production plan does is give you credit that the statute really does not. The statute basically says if you're under 10%, you got to get there. The housing production plan regulation says if you're working toward that 10%,
and you're doing it in a fairly systematic way, in your case it would be, are you creating at least 18 new units a year of lower moderate income housing, then you get some credit for that. That might mean you get a break from having to deal with a lot of comprehensive permit activity, which you haven't seen to date, but you could. So we look at kind of the demographics of the town. We look at your housing stock. You know, you're a town that's mainly single-family homes. It's not surprising. You're a semi-rural community. Unfortunately, when you have that kind of housing stock, it's very hard to meet needs for lower income housing. So the plan is intended to kind of ask the community, well, what kind of housing would you be willing to consider in order to create some lower income housing, and where would it make sense to do that? So it's the needs assessment, it's some goals, some of which are numeric, like the 18 units a year. Some of it is really around, well, what kind of housing would you like to see, and locationally, where does it make sense? And then the heart of the plan is what we call the implementation strategies, which connects the needs assessment with the goals with the now, what's the purpose of the plan, which is how are you going to implement this? And there are certain things that DHCD requires you to look at. For example, are there zoning districts that you already have where it might make sense to provide for more types of housing, say, than single-family homes? Even if you don't have districts that you could cleanly change today, are there areas of town where maybe some new zoning would make sense? Or where you would say, gee, comprehensive permits might make sense in these locations, and try to encourage developers to work in those places in order to protect other parts of town that really probably should not be developed. And then also looking at ways to perhaps use municipal property if you have land or buildings that are going to be surplused for some reason. Is there a way to perhaps use those for housing development for low and moderate income people? And then finally looking at opportunities, if they exist, for regional partnerships. That has worked well in some parts of the state, not so well in others. We have, for example, a collection of communities up in the Metro West area that got together and created this entity that serves like 9 towns and helps them monitor their affordable units and helps them do their housing production plans, and provides kind of housing services to the community. So there's a variety of ways that kind of regional cooperation can work, but that's what this is. And so the process now is, with this having been prepared for you, the selectmen and the planning board each need to, if you want to submit this to the state for approval, each board needs to kind of take a vote to approve the plan. Your board has the unique responsibility for actually submitting it. And typically what I do, and it's up to you guys, but typically what I do is I'll give you a letter for the selectmen to sign saying, on May 21st, we had a public hearing. We decided to support this plan. We're submitting it to DHCD for approval. If I have that letter and this, I will submit it to DHCD for you, obviously CCing you so you know what's going on. So if they want some changes or if they have questions, they know who to call. And then they have 90 days to act on the plan, but of course their approval of it is retroactive to the date that it's filed. Especially where you have an active comprehensive permit right now. I imagine you're going to get this filed sooner than later, but that's up to you. It's a policy decision. It's not for me to make. So I am happy to answer any questions or anything that you have about this. Really just ask me away.
Sure. You have any questions?
Just for a start, for the public, so how close are we to the 10%?
You're very far from it. We're
Four.
Yeah, I think about 4%.
4.
But I want to be fair to you folks. This is a small town.
Yeah.
You haven't had, it may not seem this way to the rest of you, but you haven't had a ton of housing development here. The towns that tend to get a lot of comprehensive permits are the ones that have a lot of housing going on and that have infrastructure, because that's really where the developers want to be. Now, that's not to say you won't see more comprehensive permits, but I think, it is a small town. So I'm not surprised that you're only at 4%. You're not the only town in Massachusetts that's there.
And you had mentioned 18 homes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a goal. So
But not necessarily to get us up to the 10%.
No, it's 18 homes a year. It's 18 lower moderate income dwelling units a year toward that 10%. So if you had a year in which the Board of Appeals granted a comprehensive permit that included 18 lower moderate income units, those would go on the subsidized housing inventory the day the decision is final by the ZBA. And they'll stay on there either forever or for a year, and if there's no building permit, then they come off and they go back on later. But as long, the day that decision is filed with the town clerk, those units become eligible for the subsidized housing inventory. You then can send a letter to DHCD and say, we've met our 18-unit goal this year. could we have a housing plan certification? That certification then enables the Board of Appeals, if another comprehensive permit comes in, the board would tell the applicant, we think we can deny you. Now, we may not, but we think we can, because we have this, what we call safe harbor status. It's not statutory, it's regulatory, but it's been backed up consistently by DHCD.
But it gives us a little more elbow room to, yeah.
This does two things. It gives you elbow room, it also gives you an incentive.
I think the other thing is that we need the housing production plan to submit if we wanted to do a 40-hour overlay district, which is another thing that we're gonna talk about tonight. And so this is a piece of that. And there's incentives, the incentive for the housing production plan is, first of all, it lays out some action plans of maybe how we get there by changing some zoning down by the train station, things like that. So it gives me some way to begin, possibly. Of course, any zoning change has to go through the normal channels, through the planning board hearings and to town meeting, but it gives us an action plan. But it also is a stepping stone for me to get to a 40-hour overlay district, which that is a monetary incentive to the town for affordable housing. So for instance, if I could use possibly the 40B that is just being introduced this evening with 80 units, 25% of them being affordable, there'd be 20 units. So that, if it were to be approved and this was in place, that would buy us a break.
A year.
If I'd have to send it off and get it certified, but it would buy the town a break from further comprehensive permits for a year. Secondly, if we did enact the 40-hour overlay district, which is something else I want to talk to you about tonight, there's two incentives. The first incentive to the town would be, once we approve the overlay district, we would be eligible to get a check for $75,000 for the town that could be used in any capacity that you so choose. The second is a bonus incentive, a financial incentive, which is $3,000 per unit. And originally I thought it was per affordable unit, but it's per unit.
That's right.
So 80 units is another, $240,000 plus the $75,000 original sign-on, so I call it a sign-on bonus. But so there's a financial incentive to the town to the tune of over $315,000 to get the 40-hour overlay district approved. And there's a lot of steps in between, so I'm probably simplifying it a little bit. I mean, we have to get them both approved by the Department of Housing, they have to be approved at town meeting, and have to approve that area where the 40B is going. So I'm just trying to use it as an example, that there's sort of two pieces to this puzzle here, and that's the first piece, and I'm working on the second piece, but I wanted to bring it to the board's attention.
And I have to support what Deb said. I had the privilege this year of working on 2 40Rs in 2 different communities, both of which passed, by the way. The last one was last night. But I mean, that financial incentive really is very helpful to, especially small towns that aren't used to any of this. And the idea that somehow, the state is actually giving you some cash rewards basically for doing the right thing. The other thing I'll add, not to steal your thunder, is that if your school costs generated by a Chapter 40R development exceeded the revenue generated by that development and taxes and so forth, your town would be eligible for additional aid to offset, basically to mitigate the expense of the school-age children. And we have a couple
Go towards the schools.
That's for the schools. I mean, this is probably an extreme example, but just so you know, Lakeville has a Chapter 40R development. It was one of the earlier ones. They're getting $350,000 a year in additional school aid because of that project. Now, then there's Lunenburg, which is getting like $100,000. So, I mean, the numbers vary, but the idea is that, here's a project that's generating revenue. Some of it's going to go to town services. Some of it's going to go to schools. If the cost of educating those children in the Chapter 40R development, or the development in the Chapter 40R district, exceeds the percentage of revenue that should be allocable to schools, which is roughly 52% by the state average, then your town becomes eligible for this mitigation money. So not every town gets it, I don't wanna promise you anything, but I want you to know that that is a distinct advantage to chapter 40R that chapter 40B does not bring.
Of course, that's one of the objectives that people always have about the affordable housing
Is
is,
it-
what if the revenue isn't gonna be enough to cover the cost of the kids going to
Right,
school?
but that's true for single-family homes, and you never ever hear that argument from people, but,
Yeah.
you know, it's probably one of the most expensive forms of development to serve is single-family homes on low-density development.
Okay. Yes, Teresa?
I just wanted to also point out that this plan really is supported by several different groups in town. I wanted to thank Tom Tebow, who's here, who's our executive director of the Housing Authority, who started the process by putting in an application to the CPC to fund Judy's wonderful, talented take and shepherding us through this process. So both the Housing Authority is very invested in the plan, has reviewed it, commented on it, and hopes to use it as a guide as we go forward. CPC funded it, also reviewed it, provided comments. We appreciated the planning board, and especially Deb, in participating. There was a community committee that came and met and looked at properties around town that looked at the plan. There were 2 open community meetings where people could come in and participate. She did a wonderful job of synthesizing information. If you haven't read the plan, it's a really interesting take on housing in Hanson and a lot of the demographics in Hanson. It's a really fascinating plan. So, I mean, I think that it was a really great effort from a lot of different groups in Hanson to kind of get us to this point. So I want to thank everybody who did participate in it.
Good, thank you for letting us know. Does anybody else have any more questions? Go ahead, Matt.
Sure, and I just kind of want to piggyback off of what Teresa just said about being engaged in the community. I was able to step in one meeting and kind of listen to everything that was going on. It was really nice to hear it all. So I guess I had two questions. One is regarding the 40R incentive financing. I know we can't earmark, but is there something that you would recommend, Deb, that the town should look into with this extra income coming in?
I haven't gone that far, but just off, off my hip, I would think, one of the things that the Housing Production Plan recommends is that we have, what do we call it, a housing trust? Set up, affordable housing trust, and that some of the CPC funds would be put in this trust, and that trust would be used to further affordable housing. So that might be one option. One of the other options is to really get some infrastructure in places where we want to build out a little more mixed use, which is one of my sort of goals is we want to put some mixed use housing and businesses. We need infrastructure that we don't have.
Right.
And it's going to be expensive to get. So that might be a place we could put it in a fund and start trying to fund some infrastructure, which would bring in more business and hopefully more income, tax income for the town.
Excellent. And then my second question is just for the viewers at home. There's a stigma of like, oh, low-income housing. I don't want that in my backyard here in Hanson. That's going to destroy the culture of Hanson. Could you just kind of briefly define what low-income is? Because I was kind of surprised when I was personally looking into it. I said, oh, well, that's really not too bad for low income.
Yeah, and
I don't know if we want to say it's
No,
not
it's
necessarily
affordable.
low.
No,
It's
affordable, sorry,
It's
yeah.
affordable, so
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
I see.
That's a good point, though.
Yeah. I want to say the median income is around $98,000 for
Probably
the town
is.
of Hanson.
I
I just was
would-
looking at it,
yeah.
$98,000 is the median income.
Tom probably knows these numbers right off the top of his head, but I would say probably for a family of 4 in this region, was it about 64, 65?
Yes, that 80%.
Yeah, 80%. So 80% is like this number that's used nationally to define low income. And so-
80% of area median income, so
Exactly.
it takes it in a specific area, and then what's 80% of the area
Right.
median?
Exactly. Because the idea is that housing markets don't stop at the town line, it's regional. So it's an area figure, and it applies to all the communities in that area. So it's not just your income, it's the incomes of all the communities in the sort of Brockton region where you're located. So people don't know kind of what the income limits are. But I would also say, I think we all have some responsibility in talking to the public about what housing need means, because there are seniors in this community who are really poor, who are barely hanging on to the homes that they have. You have single parents in this community who grew up here, who are barely hanging on to what they have. So I think this low income, people have this thing about it. It's like, you have people in your community now who are not at 64,000 or
Right.
less, and they need help, and it's your community, so it's a nice town, so help your neighbors.
That's a good
I
point.
think that's a way to think about it.
Okay, so we need to vote on this, right?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Sir, Joe Campbell, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. Is there a way that we can protect the 40R overlay to make sure that it doesn't get developed as a 55 plus and we designate it as affordable housing for families? One of the biggest things that we have here in Hanson, as we found out from the study that we did, is that Hanson doesn't have that very small family-style neighborhood. Everything's 55 plus or single development.
Well,
Is
it's
there a way
as
to
of right-
earmark that so that we can get the benefits?
Not
for this?
really, no, I mean, it's as of right development under 40R, so if
Right.
someone wants to do age-restricted housing, they can propose that. You can't stop that. Usually that's not what happens, usually they want to build unrestricted housing, and 40R gives them the ability to do that, but
We can put some design characteristics in the 40R overlay district, correct?
you can have a provision for design standards or design guidelines. DHCD reserves the right to review and approve those to make sure that they don't unduly restrict the development as of right, but you know, it's like, you
I
can't.
had one other follow-up question for some other people, like Matt was saying, out in the town. How does the state look at Hanson itself from a 10,000-foot overview in regards to our open space? Do we get any kind of credit and quality of the open space that we have to balance the development of housing? Does the state ever look at the town to say Hanson's got an abundance of open space, but that actually is good because it's the way the town is? It's kind of a 50-50. Does it protect us in any way in regards to the 10% or the 4%, or do they ever?
The assumption is that even if you have abundant open space, there are ways to reach the 10%.
Right.
And it's really up to the town to figure out how best to do that, so the state doesn't do it for you. I think it's really the best way to answer that question.
Okay, any more questions? That's it.
nope, I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any more questions? All those in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
I'll,
No,
I think
planning has to
motion
vote.
if you- Do somebody want to make a motion from the planning board?
I'll make a motion to approve the housing production agreement.
Any discussion?
They already opened it.
All those in favor?
Thank you so much.
All right, thank
So
you.
I will send Deb a letter,
Perfect.
you know, to be able to be signed by the chairman of the board of selectmen to send to DHCD. I'll send it to you tonight, actually, you can just handle it here as you choose, but when you have it signed, send it to me. I'll submit everything to DHCD. I'm also gonna add the adoption date on the cover of the
Does
plan.
the selectman have to sign it, or can Mike sign?
You know, this, I went to another town and they insisted the chief elected official had to sign.
Yeah, there's chief executive and there's chief elected, and it doesn't matter to me.
It's easier to get Mike's.
It might be easier for me.
Well, we can try it, you know
Well, the
what,
board can make the motion to
authorize you to sign on their behalf.
Yeah, we can do that.
Why don't we try that? And so move.
Make
What's
it
this gonna
easy.
happen? Is it gonna happen?
Second,
Yeah,
motion's
yeah,
made and
yeah.
seconded to authorize Mike Computer to sign. All those in favor? 5-1.
All right, I'll send a letter in to you. And no problem.
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Have a
Mike.
nice evening.
Oh, okay, give them a second.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, right? Okay.
Thank you.
Don, so do you want to wait to close when you come back down?
What's that?
Do you want to wait to close when you come back down, or do you want to do it now?
Oh, yeah, do you want to close the meeting?
Okay.
I guess we need.
All those in favor? Closing the meeting?
It's not-
Discussion?
We're gonna do it right now.
3-0.
So we
Gotta
have
do it right.
40 guys.
Right?
I think, I mean, I think that was the
delved
question.
into that.
Okay.
I think we're all set.
Okay.
Make sure we didn't miss anything.
Is there anything else?
No, I just want to make sure, what the sidebar conversation was here is, and correct me if I'm wrong, this conversation about the housing plan also seemed to involve the 40,
But
the
just
40R.
If there's any questions.
So unless there's any further questions on the 40R, I know it said something along the lines perhaps of voting. Oh, no, we took that
Well, I
off.
think my concern is,
combined, aren't they?
do you want me to?
Oh, maybe. She's probably still gonna be here.
That was one, I just want direction.
Yes.
Because sometimes I get.
So I would just say,
why.
like,
Yeah.
Oh, public comment. Sorry.
Are you talking to me?
Are you guys all set?
Yeah, we're all set.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so
we're gonna move back to.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Good.
Mr. Chair, I made a mistake. We do need to reorganize tonight.
Okay,
This is our first meeting after the election, so we do need to
right,
reorganize.
okay,
tonight.
you for, all right, so, I would just like to say something. Whatever this board decides as far as chair, I fully 100% support it. There's a lot of things that I've been working on that I would love for this board to support me as chair for at least one more year. Like I said, there's a lot of things coming up. We get union stuff, a lot of transitions that are going on, and I'd love for you guys to support me in that for at least another year, and then I could back off, and the next chairman could be vice chair, and then move up through the ranks. So that being said, I'm looking for a motion or a nomination rather, for chair.
Kenny, have to give the gavel to you, or does Kenny
No.
give the gavel?
No,
She
no,
stays right
it's-
there.
That was only one.
The only time when I did that last time, we did not have a chairman.
Oh,
Because it was
okay.
Jim McGann and he didn't run for election, so there
Right.
was no chairman.
Okay.
So I actually looked in to make sure that we did it, and it's done in different ways in different places. The way the town of Hanson has done it traditionally is this, he's still a sitting chairman, he can call for the vote. If Kenny hadn't run for reelection, or if Kenny had been defeated in reelection, then you would not have had a chairman, and it would have went to me, and then I would have run the meeting. That's why I
Okay.
did it the last time,
Okay.
or whatever time it was when.
Well, okay, I guess at this time, and I appreciate all the work that, Kenny, that you have done in the past year. My second year as selectman was a lot easier than the first, and I do appreciate that. But what I would like to do now is nominate Selectwoman Laura Fitzgerald Kemet to be the chairperson of the selectmen for this upcoming year.
Okay.
Second. And so for discussion, I would say, I would love to have you chairman again for a second year. It is like, this has been the smoothest running of the Board of Selectmen that I can think of many, many years, and we owe that to you. As a teacher, as a coach, I guess I just say, Jim has a chance to move up if he wants. Laura, this is her third year, and so far she has not had a chance to take one of the positions. So I'm totally with Jim Hickey on this, is saying, no, I would give Laura the chance as a teacher, as a coach. It's like,
Thank you.
can you pull up the first string, because Kenny has been first string and pull that off. So it's like you've got shoes to fill, Laura, but
Know that.
we're confident you can do it. How's that? Rah, rah, rah.
Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence, and you know that I think you're doing a fantastic job too. I mean, you've really brought us together as a team. I really feel that.
Absolutely.
And I think it shows, because people say all the time, you guys can't really get along as well as it looks like you do. Like, there must be like
can, we
stuff,
absolutely
and
can.
it's like, no, we do. We don't have to agree on every vote. That would be boring.
Right.
And we wouldn't
And we
be
don't.
delivering the best to the town. But I really would like the chairmanship, and it feels awkward to me because I feel like you did do a good job, but I do appreciate the vote of confidence that, these guys are giving me, and
Well, the great thing is we got Kenny for another 3 years.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. So that being said, let's move to the vote.
Well, now, any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
Any other nominations?
Now you close the nominations,
All right, nominations are closed.
and now you call for the vote.
All those in favor?
I can vote for myself, right?
Yeah, so 5-0. Laura, congratulations.
Thank you,
We'll
guys.
change
I
seats next
really,
meeting.
really appreciate it. Thanks, I really appreciate it. Oh, I guess it's up to me now.
Oh, I guess so.
All right, thanks. We'll change seats next time. And I do thank you, Kenny, and, you've done a great job, and I really appreciate it. And I hope you're gonna keep doing all the hard work that you're doing, because I know you've been working on highway and everything else. And I hope I can still call you for my sanity checks. So with that said, we've got Deb to.
Nope.
Do we need
Oh,
to
Vice Chair, Vice Chair and
Oh, I'm
Clerk.
sorry. I'm opening up for nominations for vice.
Easy. I'll nominate Selectman Kenny Mitchell for vice chair.
I'll second.
No discussion here.
Okay,
Thank you.
all in favor?
5-0. Thank you.
With that, nominations for clerk.
I'll nominate Selectman Wes Blas for clerk.
Second.
Do you want that?
Matt?
You can take it. No worries.
Okay, so all in any other nominations?
Is there a second on that?
Yes,
Second.
yeah, Matt second. All in favor?
5-0.
Okay. All right.
You're good for tonight.
But I'm not changing this seat. Don Howard was clerk in the seat.
Yeah,
Now Wes Bloss gonna be
That's
clerk in
true.
the seat.
Dave Webb's clerk in the
so
seat.
I have to jump all the way over there next week?
Next meeting.
Yeah,
we'll switch.
Yeah, next week. All right,
2 weeks.
I'm good with that.
Okay, well, that was probably the easiest reorganization in the history of the town. Okay, Deb, thanks for sticking with us, and I understand that at the next selectmen's meeting, which will be June 4th, I think, Mike, hoping that you can make it, are we gonna try to have Jay here to
Yes.
talk more intensely about 40B, what we can do as a town?
And we'll invite the members of the ZBA as well.
Okay,
That we're all aware, they're up there doing that right now, so it's kind of makes sense
okay.
that we push it off to the next meeting.
That sounds great. So Deb, in our packets, you guys will notice that I have to give kudos to Deb. She's really a little unsung hero behind the scenes. She's been working on a lot of grants in addition to her, day job, being the planning agent and all. And so one of the grants that you've applied for, and it looks like we just get it. And then somebody came forward with the price that happened to match the price that we got the grant for the electric charger at Town Hall. Where would we be locating
So
that?
National Grid came through with a grant, and it's a scripted grant, it's a fairly easy application, and they're basically just given to you. So, I filed one, worked with Ernie at the school, and I did one for the Town Hall. So we had talked about originally putting it on this utility building sort of attached to the Town Hall in the back parking lot, there's like a room there, just attaching it to the side of the building there, and that's what you're probably looking at.
Yeah.
But I had another vendor come out, and he said it would be best to put it in between two parking spots, because they have 2 ports on each station.
Oh, okay,
But we're gonna have to trench a little bit. So in order to make that fit in with the prescriptive grant, because it's 16,000 for one, 25,000 for two, we have to get the 2 because of prevailing wages, and digging that trench, it raises the price. But he can do it for 0 money to the town, and it's a rebate. It's a little different than a grant. In other words, that the town has to pay, and then we will get reimbursed for it. But we're looking at doing 2 of them, 2 ports on each station, so there'll be actually 4 places to plug in the back parking lot, sort of just alongside the building where our town cars are parked now.
Oh, okay, so
over here? Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And then we'll put those in. There is a network fee that they charge that's included in the first year. I believe it's $280 per plug-in, but the town will be responsible for it. But the town can charge for charging your car there. And they typically charge $1 an hour, is what they're telling me. And, you put in your debit card or whatever, it charges you. I would assume we have, and this stuff gets a little bit hairy for me, but
Yeah.
I think you have to set up a fund, right? The money from the charging units would go into the fund, and then that money would be then used to pay the future networking fees. Or you could shut the network off, but then you can't charge people.
Now, have you talked to Jean about the collection of the fees?
I
and
have
the
not, I
kind-
have not
okay.
talked to her about that,
Okay.
because this is sort of this, they sort of throw it in, oh, by the way, there's network fees, I'm like, okay, that's important for us to know. So before, we haven't officially gotten the grant, but I spoke with the National Grid representative, Rachel, I believe her name is, and she's like, we're probably gonna get it, it's just that they didn't expect to get bombarded, but they did. So it's just taking them a little bit longer. So I wanted to come to the selectmen and say, do you want these charging stations? They're not gonna charge, not gonna cost any upfront money. We will have to trench a little bit in the parking lot, but there's these network fees that will be a residual after the first year that we have to account for.
I mean, Matt, I would imagine Green Hanson is feeling fantastic about that, right?
Yeah, actually, I gave them a little bit of insight on it when I was invited to their meeting the other day.
Yeah.
And they were ecstatic.
Yeah, I mean, I know there aren't a ton of car, you know, but I just think it makes a statement, you know, and I think, and one of the reasons it may not be a ton is because I actually I was talking to Mary Ann about getting an electric vehicle, and I said, I don't even know where I would charge, like a purely 100% electric, and I have quite a commute, and I said to her, where would I even charge it in Hanson, and I don't even know, like, other than at my home, but like if I, you know, and so I think if we can kind of lead the way and have that, right, it would be great. It sends a good message.
And I think that too, in regards to the green communities that we signed on to, that in the not too distant future, we'll be looking at going to hybrid, if not full electric cars. So it's going to be, you know, it's going to work for us
For
as well.
town-owned vehicles.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And they had been in the past. I don't think there's one out there right now. They come and go. But there also have been grant opportunities for, if not 100%, for a significant portion of the purchase of those vehicles. So,
Yeah, currently it's, the grant for an electric vehicle is only $7,500 towards it. So I thought maybe when we get further down our green communities, we might want to put that in. Because last year, the selectmen voted to approve a bylaw that requires us to replace vehicles with
Yes.
electric vehicles going forward, except for the exempt vehicles. So we're going to have them eventually. And I thought it was a great opportunity because it will not cost the town any money. It is, I have been assured and reassured that there will be no, we have to pay, but there will be 100% rebate for the funds.
So I'm sort of calculating that after the first year, we'll be paying about $1,120 per year in fees for 4 stations. And we have hopes that people start driving electric and we can collect our $1 for them to, you know, defray part of that cost.
Joe's got a question.
Yes, Mr.
Just
Campbell.
to make a point, there's also apps that when those are in, you can blast them out on social media apps. So when people are driving in an area and they need to, fuel up, so to say, energize, they'll be pinged to where the locale is. And that's how they get a lot of the people that have electric cars, how they know where they're located, and that's how you start getting those fees and getting those charging funds.
Yeah.
So it'll become pretty popular if it's PR the right way over these apps that they have out there.
Yeah, I think I really applaud you and I appreciate it. Did anybody else have any?
Mr. Chair, through you, Deb, I'm wondering, can we apply for this grant or rebate every year?
No, it's one rebate that pays for the installation, so
Okay.
it's made up of a couple of different figures. It's $16,000 for the installation and the electrical work that goes into it, and it's $4,500 per station that they're giving it to you. So this is just a one-time thing to get this installed. Now, maybe there's other grants to pay for the network fees I could possibly look into, but for right now, it's just this installation fee. I mean, you could put them on the places in town that, I thought maybe you're gonna ask me that. I mean, if there are other areas that the town owns that they would like to have an electric car charger, that's also, I could apply for a grant somewhere else.
Right, because
I could see the library.
Well, I was thinking not only the library, but down on Main Street. You know, if we're going to try to attract people to Main Street, as Joe was just saying, people are going to have, we can start directing people towards there, but also for the police station, because a lot of the new Explorers coming out for our law enforcement officers, they're starting to become EV, and that's what Ford is kind of pushing is this electric this electric Explorer. So that might be something really nice, but I know we're also discussing carports down there too.
And maybe even up at Plymouth County Hospital when, we
would be
realize
further
the
down the road.
park,
yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
And my biggest concern would be picking other locations in the future to make sure that they're locations that are well lit for you can imagine a number of different reasons.
In the meanwhile, Town Hall is centrally located.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I don't know how long the grant's gonna be open for. In other words, they opened it up to every city and town that they operate in, National Grid did. And so what happened was the state came down on them because they weren't getting enough grant applications. They weren't really promoting it. So they put out this what's called a prescriptive rebate program, and they got bombarded. So I don't know if this is gonna be it, and it will be done with this round of.
Well, we'll be happy if we can even get in on the first round, but is that something, Matt, that you think the Energy Committee could work with Deb on?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd be so kind to work.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm here to get as much as we can get. from the
Mr.
town.
Campbell?
Yes, thanks, Chairwoman. The other question I have, with the networking fee, we could talk about it. Is the networking fee because the company is monitoring the payment? Is that what they're charging a networking fee for?
Unfortunately, I was gonna try to look at it a little bit more because it's important for the town to know. I know that he said after the first year you can just shut it off, but I don't know what the benefit is. I think it is. I think it's sort of the pinging, what you're
Sure,
talking about is that's what you're paying for the ability for it to tell people where it is and to take payment.
Okay.
I bet they also have a requirement to track usage, to make sure that the money that they're putting in is, you know, that it's not in some weird remote place where nobody's using it. They're probably trying to get somebody to, you know.
I mean, this grant was specifically for, like, it couldn't be for residential. It
Yeah.
has to be where there's, you could have a multifamily, property and get a charging station. But it had to be sort of publicly located for that reason. They want it to be used.
So are we looking for a motion
That's what I
to
was just,
approve?
I think we are looking for a motion, and may I just ask one more question? I noticed that, how did we get connected with the gentleman or the company that's going to actually,
So
install this?
you look at Mike Pace and there was a vendor list that was included with the grant application, approved vendors.
Okay,
So I made multiple phone calls, and originally when the grant came out, it was, you had to apply, and it had to be installed by May 31st.
oh boy.
Well, we're at May
Yeah.
20, So I called all the vendors on the list, and Mike was the one that came out and responded to me. He came here, looked at what we had, and gave me the quote and whatnot. And he's been responsive to me, and
Okay.
every single time that I called him. I have had another vendor come out, and look at it as well. I haven't even gotten a quote yet. It came out 2 weeks ago. I don't know, so it's, for me, it's just the person that I feel that will get the job done. He's ready and waiting. And I have talked to National Grid, and they said, when we get the actual approval, because we got so bombarded, we're gonna extend that date
Oh,
so that we're not gonna be under their gun. But still, that being said, and I don't know that we're tied to that particular vendor because the grant isn't based on that person. In fact, to get the grant, we didn't even, it's a set amount. In other words, it's a set amount. It's like I was telling you, $16,000 for installation, $9,000 for equipment. That's what they're giving you. It doesn't even matter what it costs. That's what they're giving you. So we will get that amount of money, and I could go to any vendor and that's on their list and get it installed.
but presumably they vetted that list, right?
They vetted that
Yeah.
list, yes. And like I said, this one particular person has seemed to be the most responsive to me.
And Madam Chairwoman, do you prefer Chairwoman or Madam Chairman?
It really,
Okay.
I'm a hyphenated name. I go
That's
by
good. I
Fitzgerald, I go by
I kinda
Kemet,
figured
select, and select, it doesn't matter.
If your concern is, and I think I may be picking up on at least your question, in terms of procurement,
That is- yeah.
Deb has prescribed to the appropriate 30B procurement procedures. Given the cost and given the fact it's a vetted list, she's actually gone above and beyond what you probably needed to do. So I'm comfortable with it as Chief Procurement Officer.
Mr. Dyer,
I just wanted to make a motion to approve the grant application process.
Second.
all in favor? Great. Thank you
Thank you, Deb.
so much, Deb.
I think you really hit upon it, Madam Chairwoman, in pointing out the number of things that Deb is doing that really is kind of behind the scenes. This is kind of a coming out on a few things in public, but the stuff that she's undertaken above and beyond, and of course remembering that her priority is as town planner and working for the planning board, we have conversations almost every day about the different things she's looking into very proactively with very little to no guidance from myself. she's a go-getter. She's doing a wonderful job. We're very lucky to have her.
And we really appreciate it, because Hanson historically has not always gotten its share of some of the grant money out there, so we're excited to have you out there looking for
Yeah,
it.
I'm excited too. I'm excited to, I think Hanson's really cute, reminds me of my hometown, so I'm excited to see us evolve into some, get some stuff that the little town should have.
The planning board.
Thanks so much. And you
Thank you, yeah.
you guys may or may not want to stick around for the next thing. The next item on it is Citizen Online Reporting System, which Mr. Campbell had mentioned to me quite a while ago. Whitman has a system where a citizen can go online, and I think you may not even remember mentioning it. It was 3 or 4 years ago. You can go online, and if you see a pothole for a highway or whatever it is, you can just go online and put that little report in there, and then it gets divvied out to the right person. And I don't know, Mike, did you have any success in connecting with Whitman to ask?
No,
Okay.
I passed it on to our IT director.
Okay.
And our IT director, I directed him to the example that you and I had looked at, namely the Whitman example. And he's reaching out through Virtual Town Hall and another company that Whitman has used for this particular application, and he's going to get us the information and come back to us with the costs. And one of the things that I would want this board to take into consideration at the appropriate time is the level of input they're looking for. The Whitman application seems to be pretty broad in terms of what you can send in, and I'm not necessarily saying the town of Hanson doesn't want that, but I don't want to just make that assumption. I don't think that there is a price difference from the little bit that we've looked into, whether you're looking for input on just potholes or you're looking for input on A to Z.
Yeah.
But I think that once we get a better understanding of the costs and the parameters, that the Board of Selectmen should make a decision as to how they want that tool to proceed. One of my concerns has always been, and I guess with a pothole you wouldn't have to worry about it so much, but if you get too deep into maybe a complaint process, that you don't necessarily want that sort of stuff coming in anonymously. But again, that's a
I
decision
agree with
and a
that.
further
Yeah.
discussion. But it's just something to consider when I can come back with more information for you to mull
Right.
over.
So I have a little bit of experience with point-click fix, working in Brockton and working really close with their DPW and other city officials there. The nice part about the point-click fix is you actually have to log in.
Okay.
So there's no anonymous.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of important.
Yeah, and because it's not only just to keep out comments and complaints, but it allows the municipal workers to get in touch with them and say, all right, I don't see the problem here. Can you give me more guidance? And it works really well. And I know everyone in Brockton, for the most part, not everyone, but a good majority of them, they're very happy with this service. And I'm not a part of the Brockton municipality, but as a state worker, we have a good partnership where someone will call in a tree that was ripped out of the ground at the schoolyard, and it works really seamlessly. So it's really nice to kind of see that in
That's
action.
awesome feedback,
Yeah.
because, it's good to see it from that end of things, that you're not hearing people grumbling and that they actually feel like it's working there too. So it's not just good for the people reporting, it's good for the people that are trying to work with the reporting. And, I just mentioned it to Mike and asked to have it on the agenda because I thought it was in keeping with some of the goals this board has set, which was better outreach, better access to our citizens, having people have like more of that open dialogue and an open line. And I thought, what have we got to lose by looking at it?
Right, and one closing thought is too, the nice part about it is you can actually see what other people are putting out there. So it's like, oh, the street light's out. Instead of having 20 tickets appear because there's a street light out, you can actually say, oh, West Bluffs called that in. I don't have to worry about it, or you can just acknowledge that it's still a problem. So it's kind of nice, and I think it, might not. It's going to give more work, in a sense, but it's going to cut down on the headaches, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, okay, that's great, because a lot of times, I'll see things on social media where people will just put things out, like street light out on such and such, and
But it's not getting
well,
the
it's like like Highway isn't looking on social media to see what type of issues they need to address, and so this would give people a way to channel it. So more on that. So you'll get back to us and let us know.
Yep, Brian's working on it.
And could we at some future meeting have an update from him on the other projects that he's working on? You know, and maybe help shape some of his priorities based on what the board's priorities are?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, in the next couple of meetings, he'd be happy to come in. He was actually, oddly enough, at the West Bridgewater's Selectmen's Meeting last night, so I know that he's happy to do that.
I'm sure he'd love a twofer in the same night. Okay, any other discussion or questions on that? Okay, great. You guys don't have to hang around. I know it's like watching paint dry for people, so feel free, either way.
Well, actually, touching upon that, Ms. Cafato, I know that you kind of here for entertainment purposes. So here's all the documents that we've been looking at, because I know it's kind of nice to look at them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up, we have got Recreation Commission. This is quite exciting. We've got Joan Frazzetti, 370 Elm Street, term to expire 6/30/20. Did everybody have an opportunity to read Mrs. Frazzetti's application? And did anybody have any?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Joan Frazzetti to Recreation
Second.
Any discussion?
for a term to expire 6/30/2020.
Thank you.
Second again.
Any other discussion?
After town meeting, I'm getting pretty good at that.
I would just like to say, it's about time, Mrs. Frazzetti. We know you've been like an adjunct member of that commission for a while, so we're thrilled. Thanks for stepping up.
And Mrs. Frazzetti, can I just say, just recreation. You be the force for that, please.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you participating. Okay, all in favor? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Joan. And Mary Collins is the town's representative to the Old Colony Elder Services Board of Director, term to expire June 30th, 2020. Do I hear a motion?
And this is just an annual.
Yeah, that's in her capacity as a Director of Elder Affairs.
Move to accept her for the next term,
Move to appoint her?
Second.
appoint her for the next term. Right.
Okay, all in favor? Great. And Hanson Boy Scout Troop 34, request to use McQuon School parking lot, June 1st and 2nd. I think there's information in your packets. You've probably seen things on social media. They're having a recycling event, and it's for Michael Doucette, who I think came before us before, so this is to fund his Eagle Scout project. Anybody want to entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? And 200th Anniversary Committee request waiver of rental fee. That, again, is in the packet. And as you guys may or may not know, Lee Gamache has been laboring pretty extensively on behalf of the 200th Anniversary Committee to get the Wampanoag exhibit there. And to Tom, it will be at Tom's Mill, but there's going to be a dinner and sort of like a kickoff, if you will, a little bit of a teaser so people will understand what the history is, and it will also hopefully raise some much-needed funds for the 200th anniversary. So did anybody have any questions about that? They're looking for a fee waiver for the lodge.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, great, flipping right along here. Old business, vote to accept light control property and authorize chair to execute relevant documents. Did you have a particular motion in mind, Mike?
Yes.
It is in there, yeah.
Okay, Kenny, did you want to move that?
Sure, I'll read the motion. Pursuant to Article 22 at the May 6, 2019 town meeting, to accept as a gift a parcel of land which is described as follows: a certain parcel of land with the buildings and cell tower site thereon located on Hawks Avenue in Hanson, Plymouth County, Massachusetts, and shown as Lot 1, containing approximately 9.52 plus acres on a certain plan entitled Plan of Land, Harts Avenue in Hanson, Mass., dated October 29, 2018, and owned by the Light Control Corporation, and further that the chair shall be authorized to execute any documents required to effectuate, thank you, said gift as per the documentation presented tonight.
Very good.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Dyer.
Quick question. So when, in this new parcel of land, it's including the cell tower that's down there?
Yes.
It is?
Oh,
Yes.
I
We
didn't hear
don't-
that as a
we-
question.
Oh,
I
yeah,
thought
yeah.
you, there's more to
It
that.
Oh, no,
includes
yeah,
the
no, that
cell
was a
tower.
I didn't
question.
hear it as a question, yeah.
So
Yeah,
my,
it's basically
Retained
what,
rights.
you're basically what you're doing
Yeah.
is you're
It's-
signing off on what the town accepted.
Right.
Which we voted,
It's
which the
coming
board
down.
voted back, actually,
The cell tower will
the end
become
of
our
last
tower.
calendar year until we figured out that the town technically had only accepted those 2 acres or so,
Right.
so the reason why we went back to town meeting.
So
So
I
basically, you're
just-
voting it again, based
just
on
had
what
a-
town meeting.
I just had a quick question out of curiosity. So now that we're taking on the cell tower, is that also going to bring in additional revenue
No,
such
No.
as, no?
No.
So the cell tower, Matt, when Light Control first put that tower on, I think in the early 90s, they did a one-time deal. They don't do it like they do now, monthly residual every month. They did a one-shot deal. The company paid them a check, and they signed like a 30-year lease.
Okay.
So although we'll own it, there's no residual until the lease is up.
and
I
then
wanna
we can
say-
rent it again if
Yeah, I think it's.
technology would even
I think it's
dictate so.
2026 is when it's up.
Oh,
But like
okay.
Mike said, the technology's changing with cell phone antennas. You know, now they can put them up in telephone poles and wires and,
We'll probably have implants by the time.
you know, so whether or not it'll have any value when that comes up, we'll have to see.
Yeah, no, it just was exciting.
Yeah,
Excited for
no,
maybe
that's
more money.
a great question.
No, and trust me, we asked those questions originally.
Great question, though, and we shall look at that property for potential revenue opportunities. Yes.
So I have a question for you. You gonna be okay signing that?
Trust me, the irony of this is not lost on me. The one person who dissented against it now has to
asking.
sign it. I will do the job that I have been elected to do.
Okay, just making sure.
The irony is rich, though.
Yeah,
Oh, God. You couldn't make this stuff up. Okay, so,
that's why I wanted to wait
did
till
I
next
hear a
week.
motion?
Motion in a second.
So I said I
Okay,
wanted
great.
pressure.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. That was good, Jim.
Okay, town administrators report, Mike?
The first thing I wanted to mention, it is listed under my report, and it is a problem that we kind of ran into this year and we've run into in previous years, and I've actually now put in, we've talked about trying to do something about it, but it tends to go away till it's a problem again. But now it is on my list of things to do. Going to take a look at the current capital improvement bylaw. It seems to, and I'm sure there were reasons why it was put together the way it was and why it is right now. However, it seems to be a source of confusion as to who should be doing what, when it should be being done. So, in speaking with Mary just as recently as today, generally you would see a bylaw committee do something like this. The bylaw committee in the town of Hanson has not been active in several years. What I propose doing, and I've started to do already, is to take a look at the current bylaw. The last time it was changed was in 2015, and see if it makes sense going forward, if it needs to be tweaked, if it needs to be better defined, with the potential of bringing something before town meeting in October at our special. There are some towns that do the two-stepped approach, which Hanson is doing right now, namely the town meeting accepts the 5-year plan, and then the town meeting votes on what's in that 5-year plan for that particular year for funding. There are also other towns that don't do that, basically there is a plan that is that's put together by a bylaw, by a capital improvements committee. It's generally vetted by the Board of Selectmen, but at town meeting, all you see on the warrant is the request for the funding for those items that were on the 5-year. So which one is right? which direction is right, it's a matter of opinion, I guess. But I think the general opinion has been in the last couple of years that something needs to be changed or better defined in terms of how this process goes forward.
I think yes to that, and I can only give my opinion, but the timing has been lacking for me personally. I don't feel as though I've been getting that information with sufficient time to review it for the town meeting. So regardless of what process we use, I would hope that we could come up with a rather firm deadline on when we need the information so that we can be better prepared.
Well, there seems to be deadlines currently within the bylaw, but again, I don't want to say some of it's contradictory, but it doesn't flow, at least in my interpretation, as well as maybe it could. So it may just be a redefinition of what's there already, and the requirements are there that are there already. But I'll be reporting back, and I'll be using town council as a sounding board for this, but I'll keep the Board of Selectmen updated on this, because at the end of the day, if it's something that moves forward, it'll be an article supported, promoted by the Board of Selectmen. So, again, it's just trying to be proactive. Finally, again, it's happened a couple of years that I've been here. We kind of grumble about the process, and then we forget about it because 7 other things happen, and next thing you know, it's town meeting again. So it's on the list, hopefully to be addressed in October with something that is easier to deal with.
Okay, that sounds great.
The other thing I wanted to mention, because I took the question about capital improvements another way as well, I just want to let the board know that there were only, as the board is fully aware, there were only 2 capital items in terms of the municipality that were on the town meeting floor. Most of the rest were all school items. The fiber link that was voted will take approximately 3 months from when we decide to move forward to conclusion. We did get the quote, and we could go forward with the company that gave us a quote, since they're on the state bid list, so we don't need to go through the procurement process. However, Ryan is seeking a quote from a second vendor who is also on the state bid list. So sort of a 50% solution to the fact we don't have to go out for quotes, or we don't have to go out for bids. But just to be on the safe side, we're going to take it a step further than legally we need to. So, and the other was the fire department doors, and Chief Thompson and I are working on an RFP to put out hopefully within the next couple of weeks to get that ball rolling, because it is over $50,000, and as a result, we do have to go through that process. So, with that being said, I wanted to let the board know that the individual that the Recreation Commission had chosen to be the new Recreation Director has agreed to come on board. He starts on the 3rd of June, and his name is William Boyle. I anticipate bringing both him and members of the Recreation Commission before the Board of Selectmen, either at the first, well, I think we had decided the second meeting in June, not only to introduce, he goes by Billy, not to introduce Billy, but to start those conversations that the board wanted to have with the Recreation Commission anyway. So we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone at that particular meeting.
What meeting is this, Mike?
It's the second meeting in June, which is the 18th?
June 11th.
The 18th.
Good?
The 18th.
June the 18th.
We meet the 4th and the 18th.
Speaking of cell towers, the company that is building the cell tower will be before the ZBA on June the 4th. I'll attend that meeting. I think we had mentioned the only real hurdle, and we don't see it necessarily as a hurdle, is the location for that tower is within 50 feet of an abutter. It is separated by a wooded area. We don't really anticipate any problems, but technically, because it's within 50 feet, they've got to go through the variance process. So I'll keep the board updated on where that goes. Unfortunately, I need to report to the board that we are going to have to look at a change in terms of the facility manager position. The gentleman that we had in that position, if the board recalls, we had him more or less as a contractor. He had his own business and continues to have his own business. His own business just exploded with work, and he's basically unable to really keep up anymore in the position here in Hanson. So we're taking a step back. He's going to try to wrap up the things that he was involved with. I've taken on some of those particular responsibilities as well, in particular, and this kind of delves into something else. Finally, we will be having the generator installed here at Town Hall. That's due to happen tomorrow. So actually, there's going to be some traffic diversions. You may have seen that already coming in. But there are some hookups that we need to make sure, some connections from the gas company that I'm not sure he necessarily was able to get to. But things like that, with his help, at least in pointing me in the right direction, and with Bob Curran and other members of staff, we should be able to finish those up. There isn't anything other than that huge on the list, but we'll take a step back and we'll come before the board probably in the next meeting or so with an idea of how to move forward on that position. I'm not sure at this point because we only got that information within the last couple of days.
Will that be powered by gas, Mike?
Yeah,
Natural gas?
yeah,
So automatic,
yeah.
yeah.
I had a very good conversation with Jan Mutlick. Is that how we pronounce her name? I can't even remember. The woman who is doing the Senior Center Council on Aging study. That was on Friday. That continues to move forward. If members of this board haven't been contacted by her yet, she will be contacting you. She was reaching out, well, not to go into detail, but there was some guidance. She was looking for some additional information, or sent her a few reports that she didn't necessarily have, pointed her in the direction of a couple of different individuals that perhaps she hadn't thought of speaking with. So I guess the point being is, just as an update, that continues to move forward.
But she's planning on speaking to all of us? I believe I already spoke to her.
Yeah,
You guys
I
heard
know,
from
I
her?
know, I know that she did speak with you
Okay.
specifically.
Okay, I do want to make sure everybody's,
Yes.
okay.
And she does have everybody's contact information.
Okay.
I mean, it could be as little as a quick hi, good luck, I appreciate what you're doing, or you may have some something of substance to add, but just so you all have the opportunity to speak with her. Whitman voted their debt exclusion, not by a large margin, but I guess it doesn't matter, on Saturday. And what does that mean? They will be going back to town meeting on the 17th of June to decide on what capital items they're going to move forward with. And that impacts us only in terms of the capital items that we share at the high school. I have been in touch with Christine over at the high school, over at the district. They're going through a conversation at this point as to the amount of money that Whitman got and whether or not they will stand pat on what has been approved or whether they want to modify that. But safe to say, anything that goes forward won't exceed what we've already approved. So there may be a case where they decide when they see what type of money Whitman's going to move around that one or two items may come off of what we approved, and that money would just come back to us. But I won't know that, obviously, until their meeting on the 17th, and we'll report back. But again, the money's there. We always knew, and I don't want to say another shoe to drop, but there was another process outside our control within Whitman, and it seems to move forward. And again, we've already put that money aside for potential expenditure, dependent upon what they decide upon.
And Mike, along those lines, at some point in the extremely near future, can we have a discussion as a board with you sort of presenting to us ideas on how we might do better coordinating with the school committee in the town of Whitman on school budget items? Because I think we all can agree that you had a lot of hours of your life you're never going to get back spent, and those were not necessarily fully
Productive.
Yes, fully productive, and that's not on you.
I
So-
don't take it that way.
Yeah, so I think as a board, we're concerned, and we don't want to keep repeating that pattern.
I think that we are going to need to have a conversation with the schools very, very soon in terms of not only that, in terms of coordination, but in terms of what they perceive their future to be and what their funding needs are. Because as we've pointed out, as Todd has pointed out, Mary, myself, and other members of staff, the numbers, the amount that we gave them this year, it's not sustainable going forward. And I think it's incumbent, and I know they'll do this because I've had these conversations with them during the process, that the school committee will put together some figures as to what they are going to need, not only in the coming year, but to sustain themselves over the next several years, and present that to the two boards in the two towns, as well as, I believe, the voters at some point. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and steal, I don't want to say steal their thunder, but put words in their mouth. But yeah, that we have pretty much made a commitment that this conversation, this inclusive conversation, is going to take place sooner than later, so.
Well, I know Mr. Hayes had said at one of the meetings, that, at one of the last meetings, that they had for the school committee, that he wanted to start the process earlier and have a different process. So it's easy after town meeting, we all kind of breathe a sigh of relief because we're running like Heartbreak Hill, we get over there with, and so it's easy to just kind of say, okay, we're gonna, and I know the summer's coming and, it's gonna be difficult to get people together, so I just ask that we try to keep a little bit of momentum going on
Well,
that.
even if we have, one or two meetings and they're not fully attended through the summer, the ball's at least getting pushed a little, as opposed to not being pushed at all, so.
Do you
and I-
guys agree on that, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, it is a commitment that I made to the school committee, the school department, that I would at least try to facilitate that moving forward. And again, I think we did a decent job with it, this current budget, but as you've mentioned, I'll just leave it at that.
Exactly.
Let's see. I am going to ask the Board of Selectmen, as they do every year, to authorize me to sign the year-end transfer forms. This is, and I believe that Mary put the statute in the Dropbox. You annually give me authorization to sign on the board's behalf, and the year-end transfers that can take place from the beginning of May to July the 15th. And the way that it has been presented in the last couple of years is, I'll report back to you as to what's moved forward.
So you're looking for a motion on that?
If I could, please, yeah. And it's not on the agenda because they actually voting some this evening, so.
Okay. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll so move. I have
Second.
no idea all that stuff Mike just said to try to fit it into a little sentence.
Mary got
So
it.
moved.
That's
So
Mary's
moved.
job. She will
So moved.
distill
I so
all of
moved.
that.
So moved.
Vote in accordance with chapter, I think it's 43.
43, chapter
To allow for
40.
line item transfers.
To allow for line item
allow the
transfers.
town administrator to approve the line item
Town
transfers.
Second.
administrator. So moved.
Mary makes us all seem so
That was it.
elegant.
Yep.
That was 2 seconds, yeah.
Any discussion on that?
Did you
Okay.
second it?
Yeah, I second.
Yep.
All right.
Matt did, thank you.
All in favor?
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that, it makes things move a little quicker. I guess what I'll close with is, and two of the members of the Board of Selectmen were at this meeting. On the 15th of May, the proponents of the recreational cultivation facility that is looked at going in off of Main Street over towards the East Bridgewater line, they came in and they gave their mandatory public outreach, public education presentation. It was, thank you, Carol, it was recorded for cable, and I've seen that it's, I think it was, they had put it out the next day. What I am proposing, and I think we discussed it that night, what I'm proposing is these particular individuals also reach out to and put together a meeting at the Council on Aging, because, because it's I don't want to say a captive audience, but I think you get the message out better at that location because there are people there, it's during the day, as well as putting together a more of a presentation on cable. So I'm working with them to facilitate that. It's important, and I did say that at the meeting that we had on the 15th, that we are helping facilitate this process, but it is not our process at this point. These meetings are incumbent upon the proponent. They are not meetings that are being promoted by the Board of Selectmen, by the town of Hanson.
Can you expound on that a little? I just want to be clear, because there has been, the town's been roundly criticized for not getting the word out there enough to the public, and I think it's important to note that it's the proponent
Yes.
who is responsible for communicating about the hearings, and that they did meet the required posting, which is in the Express.
Express, yeah.
And I think they have to do it like 1 week before and 2 week before.
I think
you
it's
know.
2 weeks before
Yeah.
and then 1 week before.
Right.
Just for 2 postings. Yeah, and you bring up a good point, and it was, to the degree that I felt it appropriate for us to help facilitate, we've done that. But as you mentioned, there is a line drawn in terms of us overstepping what we should be doing. This is a private entity asking for something before the Board of Selectmen, but the regulations that came down from the CCC, the Cannabis Control Commission, is that this is something that's promoted by a private entity, and you don't want to run too afoul and I guess give the perception that the town is actively encouraging or promoting a use that is going to have to come before the Board of Selectmen to be voted, a permit to be authorized. So it's a fine line. I think, and I can say this because I'm not going to be voting on it, and it's not a ethics or a open meeting or anything like that. I think it's actually a rather decent proposal. It's the best of both worlds. It's some very decent revenue with as little as possible in terms of, I guess, the negative that would come with that. So I can say that, but this Board of Selectmen is not in a position, and I'm not in a position to really promote something like that. We have to just be careful. So, again, to your point, and I will say with most things like this, fully vetted with town council as to where the lines were drawn, I think we did absolutely everything that we could do without crossing certain lines.
Mr. Dyer.
So to kind of go off of what Mike was just saying, that they met their legal obligations and whatnot, it's just not the town of Hanson that has this optic of like, we're not communicating with the public. This is all throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Having worked in Brockton and really being involved in their community, there is a big perception, and going to that talk with Andrea Cabral, the Suffolk County Sheriff, who is now a part of Ascend, she said this is a big problem throughout the Commonwealth because all they're really required to do is just put that little notice in the paper. So it's not just the town of Hanson trying to be hush-hush,
Yep.
it's just the way of the world, as Mike was saying. And then I just wanted to follow up with a conversation that you and I had later on that week, that this isn't just the only opportunity for the town to come
No,
out.
exactly.
No,
Can you
no,
and
no.
to that point, Matt, and that's what I was going to ask you. Can you talk about next steps here? So they have a couple more here, public discussions, and then can you talk about timelines and what input could the community expect? In what forum could the community expect to be able to discuss this with us? How will we come up with the discussion? Talk about maybe the community impact agreement.
Well,
that type of stuff.
they'll need to be,
Yeah.
I would say at least 2, if not more, meetings before the Board of Selectmen, one of which would be a public hearing at which anyone could participate and give their 2 cents. But there is still a decent amount of the process to go through, namely coming up with the host agreement. You'll ask questions back and forth. It'll be open for the public for them to ask questions as well. It'll be a public hearing. And again, I don't see that being finished up in just one meeting. I see that probably in a couple of meetings. And to that effect, if members of the public want to send letters in support or with concerns, those are certainly something they can send in and they can be read if they can't make the meeting. At the meeting. I don't know when that meeting will be set up just yet. I'm figuring maybe, we're already kind of loading up both of those June meetings. I would say probably the meeting of the 18th at the earliest.
Now, Kate, I had discussed briefly with Kate after I attended that meeting, just curious what the application process was. I just wanted to get my mind around it, because unfortunately I wanted to make it to the meeting that Matt was talking about, but I could not. I was double booked that night. So she said that the more information we ask for up front, business plan, financials, et cetera, the better prepared we can be when we actually have that meeting with
Yes,
them.
yes, I
And we
agree.
can make better use of our time.
Yes.
So I would just ask that if you could follow up with Kate to, she had a community that she's worked with that she thought had quite a lovely application that she thought we could kind of plagiarize from.
Well, she did, and I'm not sure if I sent this on to the board, but she had provided me with a draft local, the host agreement, a contract, which was fairly comprehensive and may very well have come from that community to which you're referring. So Kate and I have been talking about this, I think, since the gentleman came and made the phone call to me several months ago. And I do have a decent line of communication with, it's a father and daughter team with them. So I don't think that they seem to be pretty upfront and trying to be as transparent as possible at the meeting. And just wish to succeed with as little obstacles as possible, meaning they want to do everything that's appropriate so that they're successful. Yeah, I don't think that that'd be an issue whatsoever. I'll touch base with Kate again as to what she thinks we should be asking of them, and I will ask that of them, and I will get that stuff to the board prior to any meetings. And again, I don't envision that first meeting as make a decision sort of meeting, but the sooner you get the information, because it's a major consideration, putting something like that in town. And I think that's all I have for this evening.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Mr. Hickey?
I have a question, Mike. I guess this would go to both Matt and Mike. 2 months ago, we had a discussion about the plastic bags with the Board of Health. I had asked that the Board of Health come, or at least report to Mike every month, giving us an update on the education that they wanted done for the October town meeting.
I can say
So-
I'm unaware of any updates that I can
Is there
do.
gonna be anything at Hanson Day? I know they're gonna be selling transfer stickers.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, yeah. I know.
I want the
yeah,
report from
Yeah,
the Board of Health. So for 2 months,
okay, yeah.
we have got nothing. We had a forum on it where 15 people showed up, and nothing since.
We have,
So my question was really just to Mike, and he's got no report, so,
no, haven't gotten a report.
okay. Mike, would you see if we could get a report for the next meeting, please? Thank you.
To that end, though, and I know that wasn't where you were going, but it seems we also have a dance we need to do with the Board of Health on the fact with their revolving account and how what we're ultimately going to do with, what they're going to do, but we're going to be supportive of or not. With the transfer station, we've got that conversation, and we need to get going on that because we've got a gun to our head of October.
I had a conversation just this morning with the town accountant, with the chairman of the finance committee, in terms of presenting and scheduling such meetings. So we're working on that, putting
Okay.
something together.
And
They're two
similarly-
different. It's similarly with recreation.
Okay,
Yep.
all right,
We had that discussion this morning.
okay.
And Mike, since that was brought up, you and I have been talking about this. Is it possible for a member of the Board of Selectmen to be at those meetings?
That's the plan.
Okay?
Yeah, and that's a meeting
I mean,
prior
yeah.
to having a full meeting in front. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that is part of the conversation.
All right.
In all honesty, we were considering a chairman's meeting, but the Board of Selectmen could, if it so
Decides,
decides,
yeah.
to delegate a member to attend that.
Well,
So,
And we're
that
not
was.
worried about that right now, though,
No,
right?
not
Well,
right now.
we're not, but I mean, if you have a particular passion about it, which I think you do, and, I mean, each of us have things that kind of call to us a little bit, I wouldn't have any
Make a
problem.
motion to
Yeah.
appoint Selectman Hickey as the liaison for the Board of Selectmen in matters concerning the transfer station. or
I'll
something
entertain a
to that
motion.
effect.
Did somebody
Can't.
want
So moved.
Second.
to? What do you say?
You're the chairwoman.
I said
You
I'll
can't-
entertain a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Did you guys vote in? Am I in?
Hold on,
Not
I
yet.
had a comment. I just, with you working in the industry, I just want to make sure that we don't have a perception issue
Of a conflict of
conflict,
interest.
I think you may want to look at filing
Okay.
a disclosure.
I would doubt it since I am on the bottom level of the industry. But I will file a disclosure form if needed.
Just out of abundance of caution.
Yeah?
Yep.
And I have been on that level for over 30 years.
Good thought, Matt. All in favor? Okay, great.
You can vote for it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks for doing that, Jim. And I was hoping maybe at the next meeting, you guys would agree that we could all talk about our current committee assignments, see if somebody wants to change up, if they want a new one, et cetera, et cetera. And also hoping we could also talk about Mike's review, where we are with goals that we set, because it's always good to just kind of keep ourselves honest and double check. We did set goals. We spent a lot of time doing it. And if you've got other items, make sure you send in them to Mary so that we can make sure that we're discussing the stuff that's important to you guys.
I just want
Yes,
to make
Mr.
sure that
Dyer.
this doesn't fall off the radar. At the last Board of Selectmen meeting, I asked for an update on the building inspector and the auto shop.
Do we have a status on that, or?
I had asked him to do that for me, and I had sent him, and he said, just send me the list of the cars, and I sent it to him late, so, but I have talked to him, he said he will check on that for me.
Okay.
So he's checking on
He's
all of
checking,
them?
yes, I went up and I spoke to him personally, and I said, can you check on,
Yeah.
and he said he will check on that. He says, as a matter of fact, I usually go out and check on all of them. Just send me a list of all, the 6 that we have.
Okay.
With the number of vehicles. And then after that conversation, I walked
But then
downstairs
he's
and-
going to specifically follow
He's
up
gonna
on the
specifically
gentleman.
follow
that-
up on that one. That was the
Okay.
first request. And then I, forgot to send him the list until I sent him an email following up, realizing that I never sent him the list in the first place. So
Okay.
he is aware of that, and he's gonna take care of that for me.
Okay, thank you.
And with respect to the committee assignments, I will have the list of the annual appointments to you for that, not for the 4th, and then we can actually do the appointments on the 18th. That way you have a list to see who's on the list.
Oh,
We
right.
can go over the board's committee assignments, and then we can vote all the reappointments on the 18th.
And is there any way for us, and I don't necessarily, this isn't to embarrass anybody or anything, but I just want to make sure when we're reappointing that it's somebody that has the time in their schedule to be on the committee, and that we've got, people, so is there a way to kind of get a sense of, do you ask people if they're wanting to be on the committee again?
I haven't, years ago, I used to send out letters probably in end of March, early April, ask them if they want to be on the committee. And then we'd put them on, then I'd send them another letter telling them they're on the committee. If you ask people if they want to be on the committee,
They're gonna say
they
no.
may say no.
Right.
So
I
my
do
feeling
realize
on that
that.
was like, if I have a live one,
Yes,
keep
I-
them there.
Yeah.
And so when we reappoint them, they will say, I don't wish to be reappointed. If people don't want to be reappointed, they generally let me know in advance. I already know of at least one person who doesn't want to be reappointed.
Okay,
But what I can do is check with the various committees to see if their members are participating. If they aren't participating and they're up for reappointment, we don't have to reappoint them. So
Okay.
I will send that out to the various committees, see if, they have active members, and if they're up for reappointment and the committee doesn't feel they should be reappointed, we don't have to reappoint them. And we also have a bylaw that allows a committee
Yes.
to, send a letter to the selectmen if they miss 3 consecutive meetings, that the selectmen take them off and open up the seat to somebody else. Unfortunately, we do not have a lot of people banging the doors down for these committees, but
we're going to try to turn that
we're
around.
working on it.
Working on it.
Okay, then.
Okay, anything else, Mike?
No.
We've been around the world and back again. Okay, thank you, Mike. Approve the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at the April 30th, 2019? And
Yes.
may I entertain a motion for both of these together?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, one-day liquor licenses. Can I just read these in their entirety? Or
No,
just
we
say?
stop-
Move
As
it.
Stop reading.
printed in the warrant.
'cause this is
some of
quite-
these are-
this is
these
quite
are
a
some
list.
People
surprises and
Yeah.
stuff, so.
Yes, that's a good point. Okay, did anybody want to make a motion on the one-day liquor license?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Great. Committee reports. 200th Anniversary Committee will be meeting next week. We will be selling various tchotchkes at the Hanson Day event, and we've got a lot of work going on behind the scenes. And we're putting together a calendar which will be available at Hanson Day of the events. Again, cannot thank Audrey Flanagan enough. She makes us look pretty good, and has pulled a lot of information together for us. Matt, anything else that I'm neglecting to mention about that?
Yeah, I think you're good.
Okay. Final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee, Matt.
Yep, I was unable to make the meeting last week due to a family emergency, but I'll have an update for you next meeting.
Okay. McQuon School Reuse Committee, we're going to meet the first week in June.
Yeah, we wanted to
hopefully
kick out to
Keller
next
Williams
Wednesday.
will have provided us some updates by then. In the interim, I think I mentioned to you, Mike, if not, here you go. I spoke to an individual with the South Shore Chamber of Commerce. They've got a housing initiative. Patrick Powers from Finance Committee had connected me with this woman. They're very interested in working in partnership with towns on developing pieces of property such as Main Street, such as McQuon. I mentioned, and what they do is they connect banks with the towns and try to kind of facilitate that type of a thing. And so I mentioned to her that we were working with Keller Williams, and said, but hey, you know, if you know of anybody, then we can see if we can bring them in. I also mentioned Main Street, more to come. They're going to invite us to be a member of, they have a roundtable that discusses trying to develop blighted areas.
This is the chamber, the South Shore Chamber, did you say?
Yep.
Okay.
And so we're going to be part of that.
Fine. Oh, by
and
all
she'll loop
means.
us in, and we'll get an invite, and then,
Great.
you know,
Great.
we'll take it from there.
Cool.
Hanson School Repair Committee.
That's Wes.
Yes,
We
Mr.
are,
Ross.
actually, we're in conversations with the school committee itself right now to determine where this committee is going. I'll know more by our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Mitchell, Highway Building Committee. Come
We're
on, you
we're
got
gonna,
something to.
yeah, no, we're gonna meet on, we're gonna post a meeting for the, June 3rd, the Monday after Memorial Day,
Okay,
and ramp that up and get that going again.
June, that's not the Monday after Memorial Day, is that what you said?
Yeah,
Okay.
is that the right date?
Yeah, June 3rd.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mike and I were talking about that earlier.
bless you. Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
I was first.
Kenny got that one.
So was Kenny and Jim.
All right, great. Thanks.
Give it to the new guy.